Greetings, fellow beavers. Rodamon here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a new series covering Timberborn version 1.0. If you would like to skip the game's overview, the details of this series, or some of the tutorial, please use YouTube chapters. Timberborn is a beaver city builder game with a unique architecture system, wooden machinery, dams, water physics. You prepare your settlement for recurring droughts and toxic water. Stockpile food and keep fields and forests alive after rivers dry up through engineering projects. Rely on both natural water sources and artificial irrigation to keep the land arable. And I will do the best I can to explain as I play, so this is like a hybrid of a let's play. I'm going to be playing, finally, the 1.0 version, as you can see at the top of the screen. Here, let me hide the overlay. See, Timberborn 1.0. And I'll be playing on hard difficulty as Folktails on the Waterfall map. So hard difficulty is actually quite hard, meaning that I'm going to have to incorporate very little viewer feedback in lieu of sort of min-maxing and optimizing everything. The goal of the series is to simply survive the best I can against waves of drought and Badwater. I will try to keep the save scumming to an absolute minimum. It's also worth saying that this is a sponsored stream. I'm sponsored to play Timberborn, not that it has stopped me in the past playing unsponsored, because it's a game I quite like. There are two factions to be able to play. You've got the Folktails, which is sort of the classic faction, and then you have the Iron Teeth, which are sort of like the... I don't really know how to explain the Iron Teeth, like bioengineered beavers, I guess. I'm going to be playing Folktails, which is the classic experience. There are a whole bunch of maps. There's also custom maps that you can, of course, download. There are unconventional maps, which are strange. There are the standard difficulty maps. I'm going to be playing Waterfalls. Waterfalls is a beginner-friendly map. It's rather small, so you kind of have to optimize space. And I rather like the challenge of building in a finite space, personally. Now, in terms of difficulty, there's easy, which I will ignore. Normal. The big difference between normal and hard are the duration of bad consequence events. So we hit customize, you can kind of see the difference here. So normal difficulty, you've got droughts that go from like 5 to 9 days, and a handicap where like it will stop being bad for the first 5 days. You've got bad tide chances instead of regular droughts. So like 40% are bad tides. And bad tide is when it's toxic water rather than a lack of water, which you can use water wheels and stuff, but obviously you cannot drink. It will make you very sick, etc., etc. And then also on normal difficulty, you have lower water and food consumption and better starting conditions. On hard, however, your starting food and water are different. It's more difficult. The drought durations are a lot more rough, but you have a little bit more of a handicap, longer to deal with them. But a 30-day drought is like a ridiculously long drought, and it's the same bad tide chance, but the bad tide durations can be quite long. And that is the difficulty we'll be playing on hard. Humans do not make it, and neither will you. I'm going to call this Folkfalls. You know, it's Folktail Waterfalls. And let's pause the game. So, I have the tutorial disabled. The reason I have the tutorial disabled is if I followed the tutorial on hard difficulty, I would lose. I would die. The tutorial doesn't really bring you up to speed fast enough to survive a hard difficulty run. And I would be wiped within like 3 days. So instead of a tutorial, I'll be giving you the tutorial. So I'm going to do a very quick rundown of the UI before I start. At the top left, you've got the well-being of your beavers. The advantage of the well-being is the higher the well-being is, and if we click on an individual beaver here, you'll see, higher well-being means they work faster, they run faster, they live longer. And those are pretty serious benefits. And then at really high level well-being, you know, you start to reap return on investment benefits. So making everyone really, really happy is a pretty good deal. Pretty good deal. Up here, you have how many adults and children. So there's 9 adults, 4 children. Children don't really do anything. They don't work. They just eat and drink. How many are homeless? So 13 homeless. And how many are employed and unemployed? So 2 employed, or 2 vacancies and 9 unemployed. And then you have your science, which unlocks like science stuff, you know, better parts, etc. You've got your materials, your food, your raw food. your ingredients, rather your food, your water, your bad water, what is currently stored. In the global view, you have your districts view. Because this is a rather small map, I'll probably be a singular district. I don't really see the need to have multiple districts on a map this size. Your cycle and your days. And this is sort of the, on the top right, this is sort of the forecast of what you are to expect incoming for disasters. It's your, like, disaster warning system. Here you have overlays of, like, grid view, if you want to build grid view. You've got your storage overlays, which obviously isn't going to work because I don't have any storage devices. And then you have whether water is transparent or not, which is really helpful if you're trying to build in the water. And then not transparent is really helpful if you're trying to see where it's, like, leaking, flowing, etc., etc. You've got your time controls on the top right. This right here is working hours, and I'm going to boost the working hours immediately up to 20 hours because there's a lot of work to do to prepare for our first drought, and working 16 hours a day, which sounds grueling and awful, is honestly not enough labor to really prepare for the first drought. Okay, so that's the top of the UI. The bottom UI is mostly just the build screen. So you have your cursor, cut trees of, like, what you designate to be able to cut, and that's pretty straightforward, where you just, like, drag. It will bind to whatever level that you're on, and I'll speak about levels, actually. If you hold left alt and use the mouse wheel, you can scroll the levels, because Timberborn allows you to build, like, tunnels and build underground and have underground aquifers and things like that. So the Z level access here is really helpful, especially when you're trying to visualize different elevations, etc. And you can always click that up here and then reset it to infinite by hitting that little button there, the reset button. All right, over here is plant crops. And initially, I'm going to be planting mostly carrots and a little sunflower, but we'll talk about the crops in a bit. You've got plant trees, and that requires technology to unlock, and then deconstruct priorities, and then these are all the build buttons. Okay, right at the start here, what I am going to be preparing to do is prepare for my first drought. Because the game has no chill, especially in hard difficulty. On lower difficulties, your first drought is kind of like, it's okay. On hard difficulties, your first drought is like, ha ha ha, gut punch. So here's what we're going to do. In order to prepare for the drought, we need to dam up this river that runs along our district capital. So what we're going to be doing is building a dam, and I'm going to be building a dam here. So this is sort of the drought preparation, and each one of these dams costs 20 logs, so they're actually rather expensive. And I'm going to pause them for now because there's a lot of other buildings we need to build first. We can't just solely focus on the dam. A huge part of the optimization of a colony in Timberborn is to make sure that you have really good pathing to everything, because you want to minimize your beavers' travel time to maximize their work efficiency. So here's what we'll be doing. I'm going to set up a woodcutter flag, just one of them, up here. And I'm going to make sure the woodcutter flag, because it has a sphere of influence, I'm going to make sure the woodcutter flag covers all the trees I want to cover. Basically, all the trees up into this corner here. And I'll stick the flag right there. And that will start cutting down the trees up yonder. The thing is, the dam that I want to build is way down here. And ideally, for carry distance, I'm going to want to cut these trees for the dam building. So let's do some planning before I even unpause the game. Another one is, initially our food source is largely going to be berries, blueberries, because that's what's available here in the bushes. And that's going to become really handy. We do start with 90 blueberries, or 90 berries. I mean, they're blue, so I'm going to call them blueberries. We start with 90 berries, but we're going to want to diversify our foods pretty quickly, especially for the boost. Now, speaking of crops, there is a game mechanic where the ideal crop plots are about a 7x7 with a hole in the middle. And the reason for this is eventually you get access to beehives, and beehives will significantly boost the speed at which you grow crops in a 7x7 radius. Meaning that a single beehive can boost 48 crops, because it has to be in the middle of a 49 plot. So what I'm going to be doing is exactly that. I'm going to be planning on having beehive-based boosts later on meaning that I'm going to want carrot plots like this. And I'm going to remove the westernmost carrot plots. So here is where I'm going to grow carrots, and then I'm also going to grow sunflowers. Now, the way the irrigation works is the water irrigates the soil and it propagates outwards. Unirrigated soil, you can't grow crops or trees or anything like that, and they will die if not after a certain duration. It depends on the crop. So some crops are a little drought resistant, some are not drought resistant at all. So trees, for instance, are a lot more drought resistant than, let's say, sunflowers. So we have our crop plots here, and this is so that we can keep fed, because just going blueberries alone will starve pretty early on. But in order to farm that stuff, we are going to need a farmhouse, because without a farmhouse, we're not really going anywhere. So what I'm going to be doing here is building some basic road systems in this area and connecting them to the farmhouse. And then there's a natural earthen ramp here, which leads to the trees up there, which I'm going to also want to cut. So then this path will run down like that, let's say. And these will be my crop plots. All right, at the bottom of the crop plots here, the other thing I'm going to want to do is to set up some additional wood cutting so that we can get those dams built pretty early on. So I'm going to set up 2 builder flags here for lumberjack flags to be able to cut these trees, these birch trees, so that we can get those dams built. So at the moment, I have 3 lumberjack flags, a farmhouse, and a gatherer flag to gather the berries. That's not all we need. Another thing is I'm going to destroy this blockage. So, big picture, the way the game works is what you're trying to do is you're trying to dam up the rivers so that you have irrigation. Basically, if you dam up the rivers enough, the rivers will fill with water and you can keep the water there during droughts. And that's what this dam is for. But this dam can only keep us dry for, let's say, 10 days maximum. And we're going to need to improve our technologies to expand that time, because obviously it will climb to like 30 days, and a 30-day drought is a beaver town killer if you're not sufficiently prepared for it. So the other thing that we need is water. I'm going to want a water pump. Your beavers need water and food every day, or they starve and die, and we're trying not to starve and die. So I'm going to build a little water pump here, and I'm going to break this natural dam so that it fills this section with water, which will add to the total volume downstream of this waterfall here. So this is sort of my initial start. On top of that, I want to store some of the water in water tanks. So water that is on the terrain will evaporate slowly, even if untouched. Obviously, if we have a water pump here, it's drawing water actively from the river. But after 20 days, or I think it's 10, either it's 10 or 20, I think it's 20 days per tile of water, something like that, it will evaporate. You can't cover it. There's nothing you can do to prevent evaporation in this game. Like, you could think, oh, I'll put water in like a covered tank or that made of earth or something. It doesn't work. Evaporation is a constant everywhere, forever, no matter what. But what you can do is you can stick water in things like water tanks, because once they're tanked, once they're actually withdrawn from a natural body water source and put into a barrel, it doesn't evaporate at that point. So having a bunch of strategic barrels to make sure that your beavers do not dehydrate in long droughts is also a very helpful tactic. So stockpiling food and water as emergency supplies, because if you stockpile food in the farm fields and your farm fields dry up, the crops die, wither, and are worthless. So you want to harvest them, stick them in a warehouse, and withdraw them for a rainy day. All right, at this point, I think I'm ready to unpause. And I am going to increase the amount of people working in my district, which they work as builders and haulers, so that we can get the flags built. And I'm going to prioritize the flags with this priority marker here. So we build them first. Yo, okay, yeah, they're moving. I was like, why aren't they moving yet? But they're moving. In terms of order of priority, I want the lumberjack flags first. After the lumberjack flags, we're going to want the water pump. And after the water pump, I'm going to want the farmhouse. And after the farmhouse, I'll take the small tank. That's sort of the order of operation of building. Also, paths are free. So for now, I'm going to have a bunch of like worthless paths, basically paths of convenience that I break down later on when I care more about efficiency. So just keep that in mind that like if I have a bunch of like path garbage everywhere, it's only because paths are free and there's really no reason not to just put them down everywhere, because you can very easily just destroy them if you want. You know, go to this and they're gone. All buildings need to be connected by paths to work, all workplaces and homes. And this green line is essentially like the efficiency of the path. So the further out you get from the district center, it goes from green to yellow to orange to red, red meaning it's very inefficient. There are faster modes of travel that you unlock later on, like zip lines, which can help to have a large district have more transportation speed. But for now, yeah, that's what we're about. Oh, I'd also like to get rid of this blockage pretty early on, because with the blockage there, obviously this water pump will not work. All right, so we only have one open vacancy at the moment. All the other jobs are filled, and let's just make sure that we have our wood cutting tasks appropriately doled out. Yes, we've got it. One of the other reasons to build the dam here is you can walk on the tops of dams. As you can see, I can plan to have a path here, meaning that we'll get access to all this timber over here as well, which is a really helpful amount of timber early on. Okay, so we have a beaver clearing the blockage. We've got these beavers getting the birchwood. Now, of the types of trees, foresters plant blueberries and dandelions. Dandelions is mostly used for like medicine. You've got birch, which is like a quick growing tree with 11 days of drought, but it only yields 1 wood. You've got pine, which is 12 days to grow, yields 2 wood. Or alternatively, you can get pine resin every 7 days, and pine resin is used to make treated logs or treated planks later on. Chestnut trees, which is a food source. Maple trees, which is a food source. And then ultimately oak. Oak takes a very long time to grow, but it is the most wood efficient of all the trees that you can plant. So I usually will sow big fields of oak so that we never really have any wood shortages, because wood shortages are nearly as dangerous as water and food shortages, as your beavers build almost entirely, early on at least, out of wood. And Alredus and Tegador, thank you for the resubs. Okay. So we've got our lumberjacks cutting down the southern forest here to make room for, to make timber for the dams. This one cutting up here just to acquire even more wood, because we're going to be pretty wood addicted for a long time. We're almost done clearing the blockage, and then the logs are being carried over to the water pump, because that's the next thing to build. All right, blockage is cleared. And what this blockage will do is we'll ultimately open up the amount, or like increase the amount of water available, and you'll also see the effects of the irrigation. So this is the current limit of irrigated soils, and this will expand as this fills up with water. As you can see, it is already expanding, which is fantastic. That gives us more arable soil and a larger volume of water to play with, to survive with, right? Two really handy things to have, I think. So the once the structures I've queued up, the water pump, the efficient farmhouse, and the water tank are built, I'll unpause the queue for the dam. Dams will stop fluids at a height of 0.65. So if you consider the height of the map as one, let's say, meter high, dams will stop it at just shy of 2/3 water, which is decent, but it can be improved. So one of the other things that we want to do after we get the dams up is to really start pumping up the science Because we're really only going to be able to survive through the power of science. Alright, so we have our water pump up, and the water pump's pretty straightforward. They just pump water. There's an internal storage for most things, so the internal storage of this water pump is 15. So we can store up to 15 water in there. We only have a population of 13, so the water pump alone is enough water for like half a day's worth of water for the beavers. But we're going to want to start tanking it, putting it into tanks, so that we can store more water. And it's really important to have a very short run to your water tanks, because you don't want your water pump, you don't want to have to haul a lot of water far distances if you can help it. In big picture, you sort of want your food and your water central to everything, so that your beavers don't have to spend a lot of time fulfilling their needs. Because if you, you know, if you have your food and water, like, off in one, like, remote corner, and they get hungry, they have, like, a hell of a run to try to get to fill their needs. It's not very efficient. So now it's nighttime, and, we still have work. We work until 8 p.m. I know, brutal. But, this will change once the immediate drought crisis is avoided. The farmhouse is getting built. We're at 10 of 25 logs. And then I think what I'll do is group priority the dams here, and then hit P, which is pause, and unpause the building. So hypothetically, they can start building these dams. Now, on the top left, we'll also have a news feed of, like, when people grow up, when people die, etc., etc. When they're injured, there's other medical conditions. So speaking of medical conditions, one that we will face pretty early on is chipped teeth. Your lumberjacks can chip their teeth and need to grind their teeth. I don't intend to make a teeth grindstone until I suffer that modifier. And then there's the opposite, which is like making them happy through campfires and rooftop terraces. But I certainly do not have the spare materials for things like that right now. So I will consider lodging and campfires and rooftop terraces and the like once we aren't gonna die. Alright, the farmhouse is up to 18 of 25 logs, and they're sleeping. And they're not going to be able to get a lot of sleep because we're on a 20 out of 24 hour work day, and that's just simply required to be able to survive your first drought. Now there is a bit of a drought reprieve really early on the game, where your first drought's not going to hit within the first like few cycles, to just give you prep time, because there's very little that you could do if a drought hit you like in the first day or two. You'd just be dead. I mean, you could try to like dam up a part of the water here, but realistically you would just be dead. Alright, so if we take a look at their wellness, hunger, food, and sleep is still being fulfilled. They are lacking shelter, but it costs too much wood to build shelters at the moment. And therefore I'm not going to prioritize that until we have the dams built. So we're almost done with this efficient farmhouse. And I'm going to reduce the amount of workers down to 1, a singular worker. And then I am also going to fire or pause the gatherer flag. Basically, the internal storage of the blueberry gatherer is full, and they're not really doing anything anymore. They're standing around, and they're going to be hired as our new farmer. Now, what I will do is start to build some storages for the blueberries so that we can stockpile them, but I don't want to waste the wood right now for that, because I don't think we're going to starve. I think we're going to dehydrate. That's what the droughts are going to cause. So I'm not worried about blueberry storage at the moment. And this farmhouse is almost done. It just needs one more log, and then we're good. So the range of the farmhouse, as you can see here, can cover a lot of territory, and you don't really need farms this big to feed as many as people as we'll have. In fact, these 3 fields are probably overkill. These 3 fields, if tended by enough farmers to actually have a crop turnover, could probably feed like 50. We have a population of like 13. Right? So realistically, it's overkill. But like, acreage is cheap right now. I don't have a lot to do with the space, so that's why I'm just dedicating it the way I am. All right. Farmhouse is in. And then we have that berry gatherer starting to plant carrots. Carrots are drought resistant for 2 days, which means if there is a drought and the soil lacks irrigation, they will survive for 2 days, which is a pretty short window. So the second to last thing I want to build before the dam is the water tank, and I'll probably end up building more than one water tank, ideally, so that we can store a decent amount of water. But we'll start with one tank. Now, all the other tanks right now are like locked behind science. Everything is basically locked behind science. And that's another thing that we're going to need once we get the dams up, is a bunch of inventors trying to figure out better ways to irrigate, better ways to survive droughts and bad water and the like. Cheers. So these carrots will take 4 days to grow, will yield 3 carrots. It will also fulfill nutritional needs. So each of these nutritional needs you fulfill provides well-being. So a wide variety of foods is ideal. The reason I'm doing carrots and sunflower initially is they don't require any additional labor. Things like grilled potatoes, chestnuts, spatterdock, that requires grilling, which requires extra labor. Bread requires milling and then baking, which is extra layer. Same with cattail crackers, it's milling and baking. And same with maple pastries, it's milling, tapping, and baking. So these foods are more complex. These two are simple. So I'm going to fulfill the simple nutritional needs early. There is no nutritional need met for berries. Berries don't provide a well-being. They just keep you from not starving. So berries are useful, but you want to move away from berries pretty early on because if your beavers fill up with berries, they're not getting the benefits of better nutrition. And also, despite what berries are made out of, it doesn't do thirst. And then, of course, we have social life, aesthetic, awe, which is monuments, fun, and knowledge. And we'll get to that, hopefully, if we survive later on. Okay, so we need 2 more logs for the small tank. And then once we have the small tank, we'll start damming. The indicators over the beavers' heads here is their food needs not being met. And as you can see, as a result of their lower fulfillment, they have a much lower working speed until they feed themselves. So you don't want to necessarily suffer those consequences. And then, of course, like, if not fed for long enough, they die. So now beavers are going over to go grab berries from our district. Our district has some internal berry storage that we started with. So they're eating the berries that we, like, arrived with, in other words. And now that the water tank is done, I had to designate that water was stored in there, because there's other liquids as well. There's antidote, there's bad water. You know, so whenever you build a storage, you have to pick what goes in there. So antidote, extract, a biofuel, you know, so on and so forth. And until you designate it, it's just a storage that stores nothing. So it's important to note that. What is this brown water? This brown water is bad water. Bad water is like toxic water, but it actually serves a lot of purposes. It also kills everything it touches. So I hadn't talking about bad water yet. Well, bad water is like industrial sludge, I guess is probably the best way to phrase it. And it can be used to make things like dynamite, which is a great excavation tool. And extract, which is useful for like a sort of a fuel source. But obviously you don't want it touching your crops because it kills them. And then if you swim in it, you get very sick. So you don't want your folktails or your beavers to swim in bad water either. Stay the hell away from it. It's useful, and we'll weaponize it, but like we do not want to have it near us or touch us. All right, we do have a free beaver that is currently unemployed because Ha-Hen grew up. They were a child that grew up. So what I'm going to do is hire them as a second farmer for now. It's best not to have them unemployed for any reason. And here is the consequences, of course, of a lack of water, which is a lower movement speed. So we have work speed and movement speed penalties for lack of food and water, which is why we want to provide food and water at all times. And the dam is going in, and the first section of 6 is about half done, nearly. All right, I'm also going to set up a lumberjack flag up here, and this lumberjack flag will cover the trees up top on that plateau. And one of the first objects I want to unlock through tech is going to be Forester, to be able to put the trees back. So what ends up happening is the trunks of trees, like if there are still live trees around, they will regrow, albeit extremely slowly. So a forest area left with some trees that haven't been all culled will regrow, but over the time frame of like many cycles. So it makes far more sense to actually just plant the trees yourself. All right, so this lumberjack flag is unstaffed. I'm going to pause it for now. I don't really need it at the moment. I just wanted it for the future. And we're still on 20-hour work days, but everyone's about to get a break and fulfill their needs. And we're going to have the well-being teeter-totter around between -5 to 0. That's going to be pretty common early on. And we're still prepping that first dam. Now, another thing to consider is with our Folktails growing up and aging up, without homes, they will eventually die of old age and not have given birth to the next generation. So lodging so that they can actually have families and give birth to the next generation is also going to be equally important as well. So we'll get that up soon too. But the dam comes first. So what I'm doing over here is I'm just like checking the flags, because if any of these flags end up filling up with material where the worker in them is idle, I'm going to pause the flag and put them to work somewhere else. Basically, I can't waste any effort. I can't afford it. And I think what I'm going to do is reduce the amount of workers I have in my builder and hauling district, and then put them to work over here as another lumberjack, because it seems like I have a lumber shortage more than a builder shortage. That's what I kind of surmise, given that they're hauling like 1 or 2 wood at a time. So I'm going to cut down the trees up in this plateau as the next priority. All right, first section of the dam is up. And what you'll see here is it will block water up to 65%, but still allow passage over the top. Which also, in return, increases the flow rate of the water left. So if we talk about power, and we'll need to do power soon, power wheels is kind of how you do material work. So as you can see, like this is 273 horsepower if I built it here, whereas this is only like 49 because the dam blocks a lot of the flow behind it, whereas over here it'd be 128. The more narrow your water source and the greater the flow of the water source, the more the power that you will consequently get. So like here, we got 177 horsepower, you know, and then anywhere with a high rate of flow, like down here, it's going to be even higher because we have all the water on this map, all 3 water sources. So we have a water source here. We have a water source here of bad water, and we have a water source here of bad water. All 3 of the water sources end up flowing together roughly around here. If I hide the water overlay, as you can see, they flow together here and pool, and then flow out downstream. Cheers. All right, we have planted all of the carrots that I wanted to plant. And now we are changing over to sunflowers. They take 5 days to grow, and they yield 2 sunflower seeds, which is a different food source, which is why I'm doing the variety. And we're continuing to dam up everything that we can. Now, once all of these fields are sown, I may furlough my farmers, waiting for the crops to grow, because my first carrot seedling is only about 30% grown, putting them to work somewhere else rather than sowing more crops. So I'm going to pause that and put one collecting berries, and then maybe another up here cutting trees up this section, which means I'm going to prioritize building this lumberjack flag so that there's like a workplace. And if I temporarily hire them as a builder, they'll build that lumberjack flag. And then as soon as we have farming needs, I'll re-engage them as farmers. We're going to be doing a lot of that. A lot of like this sort of like efficiency min-maxing, because simply put, it's absolutely required for hard difficulty. Okay, so we almost have our second dam. And Robs, thank you for the resub. And firing that one to put him as a lumberjack. Perfect. For berries, I am going to build one small warehouse for berries. Actually, I'm going to build 2 of them. I don't want to overinvest in berry storage, only because berries is a food source we move away from later on. But I'd like to stockpile at least some berries from this field. Actually, I'll just go with the one for now. Stockpile some berries from this field, just so that I can have a little bit larger of a food stock. As an insurance policy, if you will. And these are temporary paths until these birch trees grow out. Now, if you wanted to get rid of trees and you weren't willing to wait, what you could do is you could go into the demolish buildings and resources and like just uproot the trees. But I don't want to do that. Obviously, I want as much wood as I can get, so I'm not going to be uprooting anything. So over here, we'll put berries in this box, and that should allow us to get 50 berries rather than just the 20 that can go into the gatherer flag. And the third of 6 dams is underway. Carrots at 35%. And of these pine trees, you can see that some of them are resin laden and some are not. And resin is a useful resource to collect later on, but of course it requires a lot of science to be able to tap the resin, so that's not something I care about for now. So yes, we are cutting down pine trees regardless of the resin that they contain, because I don't care about resin just yet. Alright, we just had Hoboged grow up. I'm going to put them to work as another builder. Because they're hauling wood from these district flags, these lumberjack flags, which is a bit further out. Now, this plateau has a bunch of trees growing here, but likely this will not be arable land, at least not in the near future. So what I can do is I can actually delete the stumps if I want. Because I don't really plan on there ever being trees up here. So if we take a look, and if I drag it big, like this, it will delete all the stumps that wouldn't provide any resources, leaving only the trees that are relevant for cutting down left, and then I can cancel it again. So this is a more accurate look at the amount of wooden resources we have up here, and I could do the same over here for this old oak forest. Nuke the stumps, because they're kind of like, the stumps kind of give you a false image of like how much actual wood you have there. And then then cancel the destruction of the trees. Because if you destroy a tree, you don't cut it down, you just like destroy it. You waste the resources, and that's not what we're trying to do. All right, so dam number 3 of 6 is nearly done. We're about half dammed. If you have a resource, like let's say the gather flag filled up with berries, you can click this to make it prioritized by haulers. So haulers will make sure that that thing gets emptied out before other similar hauling jobs. It seems to me like this beaver there is idle. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to put another, because these lumberjack flags are free. I'm going to put another lumberjack flag over here just to sort of clear out this area. I know that the flag is going to be obsolete, but the flags are free. So if I have idle builders, I might as well just build flags wherever I think I'm going to want them. So now with 2 things dammed, the flow rate here is higher. So as you can see, I can get more horsepower out of building here as a result. It's not really what I'm doing it for. Obviously, I'm trying to keep the water here and not flowing outwards. The water mechanics are as such that, like, all the water being simulated will instantly flow out. So if I don't dam up the river, as soon as the, like, first big drought hits, all that water in my river goes bye-bye instantly. Meaning that I lose all my irrigation and lose my only water source for drinking. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So we have another lumberjack flag up there. I'm going to fire one of these builders because it looked like they were idle to put a lumberjack flag there and then to start cutting the trees in that vicinity. And Velhar, thank you for the resub. All right. Carrots are about half grown. And the berry gatherer is about to have to be furloughed as well, because my berries and berry storages are nearly at max. It also means that I would like to, sometime soon, get a warehouse for the carrots. And, I might just put the warehouse, like, over here. Put it right there. And this is going to be so that I can have a stockpile of carrots. But this is going to be the lowest priority build. And these are going to be the low priority build. So I'm still building dams first, then warehouse. But I'd like to queue up the warehouse all the same. Thank you for tuning in to Timberborn version 1.0, which originally streamed live on Twitch. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below. I am not, however, looking for feedback or backseating. If you'd like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhodamont.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you'd like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhodamont.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching. Special thank you to my Twitch subscribers, Patreon patrons, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow Beavers.